warning, this episode of the Important Cinema Club contains discussion of violence against animals, people.
But it's not the duty of the artist to sanitize reality, but rather to simply reflect it.
Boo! Hello, my name is Justin the Clue, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, we're talking about Mondo movies. What are Mondo movies, Will?
Mondo movies are shockumentaries featuring strange rituals from around the world. Look.
It's not just your everyday thing, is it?
Let's face it. What do you go to Mondo movies for?
You want to see people die.
You want to see people die. You want to see animals die. So this was a topic that I proposed that Justin was not thrilled about, but I'm gonna say why I proposed it, which is because I'm a sadist. I like to watch things die.
That's right.
I first learned about Mondo movies in a book called Sleazoid Express.
Oh, a great book.
Terrific book about New York grindhouse cinema by Bill Landis and Michelle Clifford. And it had a whole chapter on Mondo movies, a genre that sort of started in earnest in 1962 with a movie called Mondo Cane, although there's kind of a long lineage of movies.
Yeah, people would go around with a film like Mom and Dad, which was advertised as
a sex education or sex hygiene film.
And the only reason they were showing is that you could see someone give birth on screen.
And that was the only legal way that you could show nudity at some time.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So it would get shown from town to town, and people would line up, I guess, by the prospect of seeing a vagina, even though it had a baby coming through it. But, I mean, you can even stretch it as far back as, like, Thomas Edison's The Electrocution of an Elephant.
You're seeing deaths on screen, something that you wouldn't usually see in your day-to-day.
But reading about these films, and really the genre after Mondo Cane, can be traced back to two Italian filmmakers, Gualtiero Jacopetti and Franco Prosperi.
Two directors that actually didn't make that many films, but their imprint is so deep that they defined everything that would come after them.
And the movies they made, and the fact that they spawned an entire genre of these kinds of movies, and the fact that these movies captured such atrocities, always fascinated me. And I read this chapter like over and over again, almost like, how can these movies exist?
So it was more like a moral quandary that you had with these movies?
A moral quandary.
You weren't like, I want to see this. It was more, how can these movies be watched by people?
Yeah, how can they exist? How did we get to the point where these movies got made? And at Suspect Video, the late great Suspect Video, which I shed a tear even thinking about, I used to always be drawn to the Mondo section.
Would you rent movies from it, though?
I eventually did go through a Mondo phase, and there were definitely there were
Mondo will.
There were movies that it took me years to work up the courage to watch, like Faces of Death. And I'm still fascinated by the genre. I think it's a genre that is more interesting to think about and talk about than it is to watch in most cases. But I have a Mondo Cane poster up in my apartment right now, which
the ladies love.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I can't sustain a relationship, you know?
So we should point out that Jacopetti and Prosperi, I feel like they were filmmakers that also stumbled in at the right time. Like, someone was going to do this, and they happened to be the ones to jump right on it. And what they had that maybe other imitators before did not, like, there was also some nature documentaries that came out about people, like, suffering on a mountain hike and stuff. I don't remember what the title is.
Yeah, and there were any number of, like, just white coders.
Exactly. You know? Is that they knew how to present these images.
They stunningly talented stylists.
But what that means is that to get this style on screen, they have to be exploiting what they're filming. Because they cannot get the shots that they get just off the cuff like they catch it. They have to set these things up to be filmed. I mean, that's not necessarily the case in Mondo Cane, which was nominated for an Academy Award the year it came out.
For Best Song, for the song More by, what's his name? Ritz Orlandi?
Ritz Ortolandi. I'm probably saying that last name wrong. Who is a composer who is most famous for his Mondo scores, but he also wrote the score to Cannibal Holocaust and, like, 1,000 other Italian films, and they're just such lush orchestral pieces.
Beautiful. And also Mondo Cane was in the official competition at Cannes that year, which is unthinkable, and it was a significant box office success around the world.
Now, I don't like Mondo Cane. I think it's boring.
I don't really like it either, but I like the poster I have because it's funny.
And the score is good?
Yeah, so Mondo Cane, I don't even know how to describe it.
Well, it's showing these images of like savage life in other places in the world and contrasting them to the modern day as we know it. And are we really that modern compared to the savages?
So the film opens with a rather dated sequence, I think, of the Italian star Rossano Brazzi, who the movie positions as the new Valentino. Remember Rossano Brazzi? It shows him being surrounded by all sorts of adoring female fans, chasing him, tearing off his clothes.
In like a almost Benny Hill style sequence.
And it contrasts that to native mating rituals. And there will be scenes of classy aristocrats eating ants in France or something, or you'll see grueling scenes like a goose being force-fed to make foie gras, contrasted to, tribesmen killing animals. Or there's another memorable scene where you see a Samoan woman becomes eligible for marriage if she's 300 pounds. Then it cuts to dumb Westerners in a gym.
Trying to lose weight and stuff like that.
It's pretty simple-minded, I would say. And it has this is another thing that attracted me to the Mondo movies, or kind of repelled and attracted me, is the bleak and rather flippant outlook they had on the world. Jacopetti and Prosperi kind of thumbing their nose at the audience, being like, yeah, you're all idiots and you want to see this?
Now, we should talk about Jacopetti and Prosperi a little bit, because Prosperi was kind of like a workman-like guy. He wrote comic books and he did other stuff before Jacopetti kind of brought him on board to direct his films. And Jacopetti is mostly known because he's a piece of shit as a human being.
Jacopetti was a journalist, a photographer, developed a reputation for being able to capture really ugly and grotesque images. And,
I thought you were going to say he was famous for something else.
Well, he was famous for something else, which is, let's say he was a bit of a jet setter, a bit of a swinging 60s kind of guy.
Yeah, he was a pedophile,
a bit of a guy who liked to have sex with children. And in fact, during the making of Mondo Cane, he was arrested in a hotel with two prostitutes aged 10 and 11 and jailed for 3 months. And when asked about it, he said, yeah, they were prostitutes and I paid them for their services.
Yeah, I didn't do anything wrong.
And he basically used these movies as excuses for sex tourism.
Jacopetti was actually documented in a film called The Wild Eye, which is a fictional motion picture about a crew of people making a Mondo-style documentary, which has the interesting side note of being directed by the third member who directed the original Mondo Cane, Paolo Cavera, who never went on to direct any more Mondo documentaries with the duo.
The Wild Eye is a fiction film. It kind of has a Jacopetti-like director in it who's directing a Mondo Cane-like film, but it's extremely thinly veiled. There's a scene where the character is presented as just being totally sadistic and not only making these images possible, staging these images, but relishing in the humiliation of the people. So we see there's a sultan in, I think, Hong Kong or somewhere, who's been reduced to poverty, and he makes the sultan eat butterflies on camera and he delights in it. Or he tries to get a monk to light himself on fire to protest the Vietnam War, which actually is something that happens in Mondo Cane too. The film captures a self-immolating monk, and the movie climaxes with the Jacopetti-like director filming a terrorist attack on a nightclub that he's been tipped off in advance for.
And this is a movie that you don't need to see. Will summing it up, you got the whole idea right there.
I watched it this week because I kind of always wanted to see it, because it almost seemed like
Too good to be true?
Yeah, too good to be true. And it was. The minute you hear of it, you hear the premise, you got everything there is to it. But it's interesting that it exists.
Especially that it was directed by someone that worked with Jacopetti.
Yeah.
I mean, because you also have stuff like Cannibal Holocaust, which deals with that same kind of like, it's a Mondo crew making a film.
Yeah, or Larry Cohen's Return to Salem's Lot. Also a classic film, but that also starts with Michael Moriarty as like a
Mondo style filmmaker.
Yeah,
it does,
who
yes.
like stages a death on camera or something.
So I think that if they had maybe only made Mondo Cane, it wouldn't be remembered as much.
It would just be remembered as kind of a novelty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then they went and made their opus. Well, I would say their second opus.
They made 2 opuses.
Oh my God.
So they followed Mondo Cane with Mondo Cane 2, which is just more of the same, but a little bit more gruesome.
Yeah.
And
because they're starting to have to, compete with the other, like, ripoff artists that are coming out.
This is fascinating. They spawned a whole subgenre of, like, there was Mondo Bellardo, there was Mondo Freudo, Mondo Bizarro. Most of these movies were shot by exploitation guys in Hollywood and were entirely faked.
Yes.
So you'll see, like, a slave trade auction that's supposedly in the Middle East, but actually, they just shot it in Bronson Canyon.
Well, even, like, the famed Faces of Death is almost 95% fake.
Yeah.
Like, a guy gets electrocuted, fake. Eating monkey brains, fake.
Okay, we'll get to Faces of Death pretty soon.
But first, we're gonna talk about Goodbye Africa, also known as
Africa Adio,
also known as Africa Blood and Guts.
So this movie was shot over 3 years during the period when Africa, the continent, was becoming independent and Britain was leaving its colonies behind. The movie essentially has the premise that the colonizers left too soon and
the savages took over.
I don't know how to put it in a...
right there.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. It's a racist piece of shit.
Okay, so I watched this movie today. Justin also watched it today for the first time in, I hadn't seen it in, I think, 7
I
years.
never seen it.
You never seen it?
No, because I watched Goodbye Uncle Tom. I got it. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
What a movie. I mean, it's utterly disgusting.
And it's insane how beautiful everything looks.
Breathtaking.
Like, there's a shot of the camera dollying across an abandoned house that the colonists left, and it lands on, like, a for sale sign, and then a tractor goes and picks up that for sale sign, and you see all the ground being ripped out, and it's all done in one take.
And who is driving the tractor? A black African. And there's a shot before that of one of the white family's homes has been repossessed, and the white family looks on helplessly as the Africans help themselves to their bed and their furniture and their clothes. So the thesis of the movie is also that because there was no control, there was no central government, all the national parks were open to any pillagers and looters and poachers. So there are all these scenes that, of course, Jacopetti and Prosperi totally collaborated in. And
where you see
possible.
Animals just killed on screen, like speared by 100 spears stumbling around. There's a scene where they're, like, knocking over zebras with 2 trucks with a rope between them, and they're just going, and you just see one long take of the zebras all falling over. Just awful stuff.
But that zebra scene, stunning. I mean, it's but no, it's the way it's filmed.
It is
unbelievably beautiful, and it's horrible. There's another scene where a bunch of African tribesmen are, throwing spears at, what is it, a hippo in a mud pond or something, which is also just incredibly arresting. Many scenes of, horses
just being killed,
stampeding.
An elephant gets cut open and they take out the elephant's baby afterwards.
Yeah.
It's real gross stuff shot in the most picturesque, cinematic, like, we did 30 takes of this to just get right, to get the rack focus to, like, the elephant's dead eye.
So in between all this, I mean, if you were going to make a defense of the movie, and defenses have been proffered over the years...
oh, they just captured it, right? Like, it was happening anyway. Well, yeah, fuck you.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there was a lot of controversy at the time. In fact, Jacopetti was tried for collaborating on a murder.
Yeah, because supposedly they were going to film an execution, and he wasn't able to get there on time, so he got them to just delay it by 1 day.
I think he was acquitted on that charge. I don't know if they were able to prove it or not.
All they have to do is show this movie, and he should have been thrown right in jail. Like,
the defense of the movie, if there is one, is it captures all this amazing Civil War footage.
Yes, there is some off the cuff, like they're driving and they're getting attacked by people, and that is obviously not staged.
Yeah.
But, oh man, everything else.
But so
there's a court case where there's all these dramatic angles of people being sentenced to, like, hard labor for life, and those people were probably sentenced, and Jacopetti was, like, forcing them to get the right angles in this most important moment of their life just for some dramatic flair on camera.
So the movie has the theory that, the blacks have taken over, the country's in panic. A few noble Anglo-Saxon organizations like the World Wildlife Foundation are trying to hold things together, but there is a country in Africa that's, still holding it together, still heaven on earth, and guess what country it is? That's right. It's South Africa, where we see a 5-minute montage of
women on trampolines.
Beautiful blonde white women surfing and trampolining. And
this follows
a beautiful resort town.
30 minutes of just animals being killed.
Yeah.
Like,
so
you get some of the sugar, you get some of the spice, you mix it up together.
This shows you how manipulative the film is, because after 30 minutes of animals being killed, you're like, oh, finally, some nice looking people trampolining. And then it throws you right back in the muck with this scene of there's a smash cut to a bunch of tribeswomen dancing for cameras and trying on American women's clothes to show that, oh, look at these silly tribes people, they want to be like Americans but they just can't because they're not evolved enough. Like, that's the thesis of the movie.
Yeah, it's a terrible, awful thesis of a film that is 2 hours and 20 minutes.
I was not bored.
Well, it was brutal. It was just brutal watching this. And
what do you even say?
So when I heard about these like Mondo movies and stuff like that, I had no interest in seeing them. I was like, why would I watch that? Like, I know it's out there.
Are you saying that, okay, this is an interesting question that I don't know the answer to. Should people watch Africa Adio?
No, they shouldn't. They don't have to. Why would they?
Well, people don't have to, but I mean, it's an incredible document. If you watch this movie, you're not supporting it in the sense that like nobody's going to make another movie
even
like
though
this.
That when it was released on DVD, there was an interview with Jacopetti and Prosperi on the disc, so you buying that DVD probably gave them money because they sold the rights to it.
Okay, that's bad, but also they're both dead now.
Yeah, they're both dead now. That's true. But like the question of should you watch it?
Well, okay, should is the wrong word, but like
if you're interested in it, should you? Like, yeah, you can go watch it. Like, no one's going to stop you.
Yeah.
Am I saying it should be banned? No, like it exists. Like it's done.
But like, are you glad you saw it?
No, not really. Like, it's fine. I'm more glad that I saw the movie they made after, which is crazy and almost as bad as Africa Blood and Guts, just because it's so out there. And that film is Goodbye, Uncle Tom.
Yeah, so you did a Loose Cannons episode on this, but I mean, I always love an opportunity to talk about Goodbye, Uncle Tom. This was the movie that Jacopetti and Prosperi, so Africa Adio came out and it was widely accused of being racist trash.
Isn't there a famous like Roger Ebert review where he was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, and so Jacopetti said, I'm not racist. In fact, I'm going to face those accusations head on by making the most honest movie ever made about slavery in America.
But his reaction was basically, hey, you think that Europe was racist? Look how racist America was.
Yeah. And they did a Mondo-style mockumentary about slavery in America in the Deep South. It was filmed in Haiti with the collaboration of the brutal dictatorship at the time.
But the like framing device is so crazy, which is a documentary crew travels back in time to the South.
Not just any documentary crew, Jacopetti and Prosperi.
That's right.
You see their traveling wagon that has their name on it.
And are filming all this horrible stuff. And I would say it's even pushed further into the realm of like cinematic style than even Africa Blood and Guts was.
Well, I mean, the movie looks incredible. In fact, you can see direct visual quotations of it, I think, in Django Unchained, which if Django Unchained, which I think is a good movie, took anything from this movie, it's the idea that, you know, the aesthetics of an exploitation film can shock the viewer and therefore make the outrage of the situation more visceral to the viewer than, say, the color purple Amistad approach.
And the thing about Goodbye Uncle Tom is that we've been talking about it in the context of like, oh, that sounds like a mockumentary, a fictional film. Oh no, they were still torturing people on screen.
Well, the movie, you know, to recreate the conditions of slavery in the American South, they basically recreated the conditions of slavery in the South. So they, as I said, they're working with this brutal Haitian dictatorship. They had hundreds of black poor extras who worked for a bowl of rice.
Who at some points they give water enemas to.
They give water enemas that, you know, they're all filmed nude with just leering shots of their breasts. You know, there's a scene, a really brutal scene with a Jewish race scientist who like uses a pair of tongs on one of the black men's penis. There are brutal rape scenes of dozens of black people, squeezed together in cages
and in ships and
cattle
stuff like
trains. Scenes of people being, hosed down.
It's just brutal to watch, but it's filmed so beautifully with another Ritz Ortolandi score to just propel you through it.
And then the movie gets even crazier because Jacopetti and Prosperi become part of the plot, because there's a subplot where one of the filmmakers, we don't see the filmmakers, we see it POV style, is seduced by a 13-year-old slave girl. A little bit of autobiography there from Jacopetti. And then the movie ends.
I love the ending of the movie.
The ending's incredible. It's set in the modern day with some Black Panther types literally shooting up a suburban white family.
Throwing a baby against the wall where it explodes in blood.
So basically what Jacopetti and Prosperi are saying is, hey, black audience, look at all that outrage that the black Americans have been subjected to. Don't you want a little revenge? Let's have a race war.
The distributor was incredibly terrified that it would be an incitement to violence.
And I believe there actually was a riot on the opening night in Times Square.
As there should be.
Yeah.
Because, oh my God, that movie.
Yeah. And, the movie, Pauline Kael had a famous review. It was generally received as a crime against humanity.
As it should be.
And it was received as an incitement to race war.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think a defense can be made of the movie in that there has still never been a more vivid depiction of the atrocities of slavery?
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
That is undeniable.
So
the movie is a singular piece that will probably never be recreated like that ever.
And thank God.
Yes, thank you. But we watched another Mondo film, which was kind of one that was in the weeds for a long time, called The Killing of America.
After a movie like Africa Addio, where can the genre go from there? It goes to the death film. So Faces of Death, which I revisited half of this week.
It has an amazing commentary track with the director of the film.
Faces of Death does?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, I gotta seek that out.
He was just some dude who got a bunch of stock footage and decided, hey, I know what I can do to make a buck. Let's make this movie. That was like the famous Mondo doc when I was growing up that people would talk about, like, you don't want to see this, banned in 46 countries.
It was a compilation of death footage, and I love the intro. It opens with a guy who calls himself Dr. Francois B. Gross, played by an actor named Michael Carr, who claims to be a pathologist, and he has these glasses that are too small for his head, and he's just come out of an autopsy, and he says to the camera that I've been fascinated by death for my whole career, and I've traveled the world trying to understand death. Here are some of my findings, and the thesis of the film is basically death. Ain't it something?
Yeah.
So
look at this. Look at all this death.
Look at all this death. So a lot of it, as you said earlier, is staged. There's a guy getting killed by a crocodile, a guy getting killed by a bear, the electric chair scene, which is so famous and memorable, all staged. But there's a lot of animal killing that's very hard to watch. The movie opens with early in the movie, there's a dog fight. And I gotta say, watching it this time, I saw this movie probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I didn't remember Faces of Death having that big an impact on me because so much of it is so stupid. But watching that dogfight, I was really bothered by it.
Well, animal killing is something that would extend beyond the Mondo film and go into the kind of Eurotrash films like the cannibal genre, which was a spin-off of that. And there's nothing more difficult to watch or more shocking than that. And that's why the filmmakers kept going back to it, because they knew it would shock the audience.
But I was watching this movie wondering, am I getting more sensitive as I get older? Because another example would be a movie like a much better movie, Alain René's Night and Fog, which I saw in undergrad and features a lot of footage of the Nazi death camps. And watching it in undergrad with a class at
you were like, this is no Fight Club.
Yeah, basically. But I don't know. I didn't remember it having much effect on me because it was like, oh yeah, the mass graves. I've seen that before. But I saw it again more recently, and there was an image in the film of one of the SS experiment rooms that had a bucket of severed hands. And I've been having trouble getting that image out of my fucking head.
Really?
Like, it really bothered me. And I think I must just be getting more sensitive as I get older.
Well, I just watched The Killing of America, that other doc we watched, and there's an image that flashes on screen very briefly of Sharon Tate's pregnant stomach stabbed in the Charles Manson killing. And it was so gross that I was like, ugh.
The Killing of America, which came out in 1981...
but was never released in North America.
Until just recently when Synapse put it out. It was mostly made for the Japanese market, oddly enough. It was directed by Sheldon Renan, but the main creative force behind it was the writer, producer, and I guess uncredited co-director Leonard Schrader.
Brother of Paul Schrader, writer of Taxi Driver, and a director of such classics as Dog Eat Dog.
Oh yeah, The Canyons.
Yeah, and The Canyons as well.
Good stuff.
Exorcist, the beginning.
I was reading about Leonard Schrader in Cinema Sewer this morning. Apparently, the Schraders,
they did not get along.
Well, they didn't get along, but their uncle committed suicide when Leonard was 8. And then 5 years to the day after that, their uncle's son, their cousin, killed himself.
With a gun.
And then with a gun. And then 5 years after that to the day, their uncle's second son killed himself. And
maybe their Calvinist upbringing had something to do with that?
The Schrader boys and their Calvinist upbringing were also regularly beaten by their father. And maybe it's all of this that makes The Killing of America feel less disingenuous than some of the other Mondo movies.
Well, I think the thing about The Killing of America is while there is a bunch of new footage that was shot for it, it feels really off the cuff and not staged like it does in the Jacopetti films.
There's nothing beautiful about the film.
No. It was actually shot by the cinematographer Jean-Luc Godard's Masculin Féminin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he was famous for being a wartime photographer.
It captures some incredible footage of, like, Times Square, you know.
And, like, him just following, like, police officers, and, like, there's a nasty shooting where a woman, like, rolls out of a house after being shot.
Oh, awful. Yeah.
I should point out as well that I watched the Japanese version, which is 20 minutes longer, because I didn't realize I was watching the long version on the Severin disc.
I can't imagine another 20 minutes of this. It's such a brutal viewing experience.
Yeah, because what it's doing is, as opposed to, for example, Mondo Cane, it's not comparing and contrasting anything. It is just stuffing gun violence stories in your face. All famous shootings, little shootings, all shootings.
It basically says that the assassination of JFK was a turning point in America. And then from that, it enumerates every notable gun murder since then, and a lot of murders that weren't gun murders, like John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah, it kind of turns into serial killer territory by the end. There was something I had never even heard about, like the woman that shot at a bunch of elementary school children.
Yeah.
And when she was brought in and asked why she did it, she said, "I hate Mondays."
And it's narrated with this gravity. Like, Mondo Cane has this Peter Ustinov narration that's kind of smug and comical. This one is like Dragnet or something.
Exactly, that's what it is. It's like James M. Cain style film noir narration. I did go to the English version just to see what it sounded like, because the version I watched was a very brusque sounding Japanese man who narrated everything.
I think the movie is flawed. The flaws would be that it doesn't really question what are the bigger forces at play here.
No, it's just presenting this information. And Leonard Schrader, when interviewed about the film, said that he wanted to be like a trip where you have no guardrails and you're just thrown right in.
I think it's implicitly pro-gun control and also pro, lock them up.
Yeah.
Also, towards the end, I start asking myself, what do all these things have to do with each other? For the first half, it's fairly coherent. With all the assassinations.
And all gun-based as well.
But then I start to think, okay, what does John Wayne Gacy have to do with it? Mm-hmm. But then you might say, actually, John Wayne Gacy's in here because the movie is giving a bleak message that there's a sickness at the core of America.
And right now they're being expressed as gun violence, but it exists in other forms.
And it can't be solved.
That's right.
Which is a very bleak message. But watching this movie for the first time in the Trump era, we have more gun violence than ever, it seems. I actually don't know if that's true. Sometimes they say the murder rate is going down, but we have all these...
It's still present.
Well, we have more mass killings than we used to have. It seems every couple of months there's something like the Pulse nightclub shooting, which that sort of murder isn't covered in this movie because it seems to be a more recent innovation, with Columbine or something like that.
Well, they talk about the tower shooting that happened at the university.
Charles Whitman.
That's right, who got on the tower with a sniper rifle and just started shooting random people.
Yeah. So, I don't know, it's kind of nice when things seem so bad to just spend a little time with a movie that says things are bad.
Does it make you feel better? Like... it's like, oh yeah, things are bad.
Well, it's just nice to see a movie that kind of tells it like it is.
And it's also a movie that when it ends, you're just sitting there and you're like, what's the point in getting up?
Yeah.
Because it's so miserable. But there's also an interview with the serial killer, Ed Kemper, that pretty much is like the climax of the film, that Leonard Schrader actually conducted himself, that is so sobering, listening to this crazed serial killer who would cut off the heads of women that he picked up and sleep with them, talk in the most lucid fashion about what he did, and that, like, you know, it's a feeling that he had. There was a funny quote in one of the special features that he looked at Leonard Schrader at one point and he went, "I killed you." And Leonard Schrader was like, "What? What are you talking about?" He goes, "Oh, I kill everybody I meet in my mind."
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The other thing that I value about the movie is simply all the material that's in it. I kept being amazed that, like, oh my God, we're going to see this murder.
Yeah, because
like,
it's mostly archival footage that you're seeing.
But there's stuff in here that I was surprised to see was actually filmed, like the Kent State Massacre, or we see George Wallace get shot. You know, I mean, everyone's seen the Zapruder film, but you know that famous photo from the Vietnam War of the guy being shot in the head?
Yeah, you get to see it on screen in this movie.
You see it on film and you see the aftermath, and you think,
blood shooting out of his head.
I can't believe this was actually captured on film. And whether or not you actually find that a valuable or edifying experience to watch is subjective, but I was fascinated by it.
Well, I'm going to say that I actually appreciated Killing of America in ways that I didn't like Mondo Cane and Africa Blood and Guts and Goodbye Uncle Tom, mostly because The Killing of America is not engineering these horrible atrocities on screen, while Jacopetti and Prosperi are. And there's a big difference between both of those, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're showing you nasty stuff, but they're not creating those nasty things, which is different, I feel. And the message that they're going for The Killing of America is not necessarily one of pure entertainment, as opposed to Jacopetti, which that's what he feels like he's doing. Schrader wants
and
to
he loves it.
punish you. Yeah. So Mondo movies, they had a very kind of short shelf life. Like, Faces of Death had 5 sequels, but they actually just started parodying themselves right up until the end.
Although there were a ton of Faces of Death ripoff type things, like there was Traces of Death, death scenes or whatever, stuff that was a mix of staged footage and, just whatever was like,
on the evening news, pretty much.
Yeah, on the evening news, like, the John Landis Twilight Zone disaster. Or who's that guy who... he was a politician who was going to get caught on some corruption charge.
And he committed suicide during a press conference.
Yeah, we've all seen that famous thing. Like, that would be in all of them. And stuff like that is still being made today, but in the context of, like, ISIS beheading videos.
Yeah, I mean, all this stuff just moved to the internet.
Yeah.
When you were a kid, did you go out looking for those videos?
No, I
didn't. Yeah,
didn't.
Me neither.
We all knew the guy who did, though.
Yeah, the guy in the class. Who was
Yeah,
like, you gotta see this crazy shit. And you're like, why would you show that to me?
Or even, like, Two Girls, One Cup is kind of a similar impulse. Or, to use a lighter example, Fox with their, like, World's Wildest Police Chases.
Yeah.
Is kind of in a Mondo tradition, I guess.
Yeah, the Mondo genre just kind of got commodified by primetime television into a more easily digestible chunks.
But you're right that it's migrated to the internet where it seems a little less forbidden. Back in the day, teenagers would rent Faces of Death for their sleepover birthday party and watch it as a dare, and it was this forbidden object. But now you can actually watch Faces of Death on YouTube. You can find an ISIS beheading video anywhere. I'm not, like, lamenting any lost golden period or anything.
But it's just like the times change, right?
Yeah, and it seems there's less mystique around it.
That's right. And that's what those films had back then. And I think that the Jacopetti ones, like I said, it's because they're filmed so well that they're very fondly remembered. While people don't check out Faces of Death that often, other than as, like, a footnote.
Yeah, or if they're interested in Mondo movies, so they force themselves to watch it.
All right, man. Well, that was a bummer of a conversation. So let's move on to some happy times, because we got letters.
I was just glad to get this Mondo stuff off my chest because It's been nagging me for so many years.
Like, what has been nagging you about it?
I've just always been fascinated by it.
And
it's good. It's good to talk about it. It's good to work through it.
So you can go home and just knock all your DVDs into a trash pile, just light them on fire, rip your Mondo poster from the wall.
No, I'll keep the Mondo poster up. It looks cool.
What is the image of it?
Oh, it's got, like, a bunch of little images from the movie, like, see a chicken who can smoke a cigarette,
I mean, that sounds pretty hilarious and fun. I want to see that movie.
Yeah.
So, letters. Dear Justin and Will, I was wondering if you have seen the 30-minute YouTube film Kung Fury. It combines the aesthetic of a Need for Speed cutscene with the Do you have any experience with the Need for Speed cutscene?
No.
Nah, me neither. With the humor of a 12-year-old.
I have experience with that.
Ah, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey, I think it would be very funny to hear you two talk about, but not because I think it is very good. All right, Kung Fury. Have you seen it?
No.
I have. It's bad. It's just that kind of insincere, like, hey, remember the 80s? Let's throw a bunch of bullshit on screen.
This is why I didn't watch it, because it had the affect of something that, like, yeah, Kung Fury, you don't like Kung Fu movies. I like Kung Fu movies.
But it's not even like
You're
that.
fake.
It's like, remember all the stuff you loved in the 80s? Look, we threw a VHS filter on it, and it's covered in CGI.
Yeah.
There's like a polar bear with machine gun for hands.
Yeah, fuck that shit.
Yeah, it's bad.
All
It's the kind of, we're giving you what you want salesmanship that it always throws me off. If you want to watch something like that, go watch Manborg, which was directed by Steve Kostansky, which is basically what Kung Fury is, but much more heartfelt in the way that it's presented. And Manborg is actually 60 minutes, almost a movie, as opposed to Kung Fury's 30 minutes. All right, so he also asks one other question. How do you feel about the YouTube film community that is currently growing bigger and bigger? And he doesn't mean Sex Man Films, a favorite of me and Will's.
I love Sex Man films.
And it has nothing to do with sex, if anybody's wondering. It's a kid recreating, I guess, the Terminator.
Yeah, he does like his little pastiche blockbusters on his front lawn.
And the letter continues, I am talking about all the reviewers and all the people who upload video essays about Christopher Nolan films. What fun. Are there any you like? Not really.
Are there any? No, I mean, I've seen good video essays.
There are some very good video essays.
There's no one maker of video essays that I'm a particular fan of. I've seen some on Fandor that I think are good.
Yeah, I mean, the video essays, as a kind of delivery system for information, there's nothing inherently wrong with them. I think that what I don't like is either a super glib tone where it's like, look how bad this is, honest trailers.
Oh, I hate that.
Or it's the kind of somber Mark Cousins-ish, like, I'm whispering this information to you.
Well, I enjoy Kentucker Adley's, like, parody video essays where it'll be like the use of themes in Richie Rich.
Or the family in Liar Liar.
Yeah, I think I might like that stuff more than you. I think it's very funny.
There's not enough hilarious essaying in those YouTube videos. There's one that came out recently on Neil Breen that I really enjoyed.
Was that a joke?
Yes, it was a joke.
Okay.
But that's the best thing, right?
Yeah,
is that he's like talking about all these things in a way where you're like, wait, is this serious or is this not? Right. And I'm sure I've watched video essays other than that I really enjoy, but none come to mind.
Well,
right now.
I do hate those like honest trailer, everything wrong with Iron Man in 20 minutes because it's just nitpicking garbage. Then there are things like the Nostalgia Critic or stuff like that, which, I think the Nostalgia Critic is pretty lame, but I think the appeal of his videos is mostly the fact that like you get to see clips from a movie you grew up with and it kind of prods at those pleasure centers of your brain.
It's really easy to make fun of stuff on the internet in video form.
Yeah.
Like that is a cottage industry. People love that shit. Not a big fan.
Does Red Letter Media count as a...
Well, I'm not too familiar with their work. I've watched your Star Wars videos, which I very much enjoy.
The Mr. Plinkett stuff, yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't watched their like half in the bag video reviews or stuff like that. But people that I know really enjoy them. Maybe I haven't watched the right one. Who knows? Yeah. But they are also very passionate about what they're talking about. It's not instantly dismissive. That's what I feel about people that do like honest trailers. It's like, what do you like? Like Raiders of the Lost Ark? That's it.
Well, it's not even about the movie. It's about, this is our shtick and this is going to get us... This is going to get us clicks, so we're going to do it.
All right. Well, thank you for the letter, Elmer. We have another letter, and this one is from Sebastian. Dear Important Cinema Club, hey there, guys. I'm a junior in high school, and against my better judgment, I've decided to start a film appreciation club at my school. I started listening to this podcast to find movies to screen when school starts up in September. Unfortunately, most of the movies you talk about are not really suitable for fledgling cinephiles. If I start off with Inland Empire, I'm going to scare kids away. Do you have any suggestions for films that are challenging, but not too challenging? Thanks for making such a great podcast. Keep up the great work.
That's a good question.
Detour.
Yeah, Detour. Now, it's hard with high schoolers because,
not even high schoolers, junior high schoolers.
Yeah. My suggestion would be, like, I'm gonna be pretty conservative here. I would say, try Wes Anderson.
Yeah. They probably like that.
It's in color. It's got famous movie stars they know.
I started a film appreciation club in college that lasted 2 meetings because I had to write bylaws, and they denied my first writing of them and said, you have to go write it again. And I went, this is 30 pages. I can't do it again. And the 2 movies I showed, I don't know if I would recommend the first one because you'd probably get in trouble for showing it, which was Battle Royale. But in this, landscape of like the Hunger Games being a big junior high book, is Battle Royale that bad now?
I don't think so. Also, I would lean towards maybe I mean, it feels weird for me to say this, but what was up for Oscars last year? What are some of the better kind of PG-13 Oscar nominees? Because listen, we're talking about junior high
You're really
here.
putting them down to the ground.
This listener sounds very smart.
Yes. I would almost suggest that pick the blockbusters from other countries that are digestible. Like something like The Host. It would be a good one.
Yeah.
It's a big monster movie. I showed that my second night of my film society, and it went over very well because it's speaking a language that most early cinephiles understand, the blockbuster, but it's twisting them in interesting directions and can lead to actually fascinating discussions afterwards.
Or maybe the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
If they've done some PG-13 stuff like The Big Lebowski or, that kind of thing.
Or, junior high school students now, they have the internet. They watch all sorts of X-rated stuff.
Faces of Death.
That's right. All right. Hopefully we had a few suggestions there. The Host, Wes Anderson.
I'm sorry.
The Coen brothers.
The problem is because I don't want to veer too old either, because I might say, Terry Gilliam or something, but he's too old. His good ones, right?
You think he's too old?
What's the stuff that we liked, when we were in...
I love Terry Gilliam.
Yeah.
A good one to show them. Brazil may be a little bit too much for them. Baron Munchausen's a lot of fun, but may skew a little too kiddie-ish.
Yeah. God, it's so hard. Because kids think they're sophisticated, too.
Yeah, but they're not, right?
But they're not. So that's a difficult balance.
I really like John Woo a lot when I was a kid.
He's too violent.
Yeah, he's too violent. I like how our teachers discussing
The Naked Gun. I just saw it on your shelf. The Naked Gun, Airplane, Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, Monty Python and Holy Grail is a good one, yeah. And that may be one that they haven't seen because,
Is it too old?
No, I don't think so. Okay. And I think that its humor is very accessible. When I was a kid...
All of my friends liked it.
And the problem, if you show Monty Python and the Holy Grail to a group of people who have never seen it before, all they're going to do is quote it for years and years. So you better be ready to make that choice. And we actually have a third letter...
Oh, good job. Important Cinema Nation.
Oh, and thank you for that letter, Sebastian Sarkozy. Our final letter is from William Perkins.
Oh, from dorkshelf.com.
Yeah, it starts, hi, I'm Will Perkins from Dorkshelf and art of the title here. Free plug for him, I guess.
Yeah.
First, let me say I've really been enjoying the show. I always come away feeling like I've learned something, or at least get to add a few movies to my watch list as a result of listening. That's what we do it for, Will. I'm a supporter...
We do it for the fans, not the critics.
Yeah, like Podmass, who hasn't written about us yet.
Yeah, come on, Podmass.
I'm a supporter on Patreon, and always get a kick out of your patron-only episodes. People are seriously missing out if they're not patrons. Well, thanks for the plug, Will.
Hell yeah.
I particularly enjoyed the Austin Powers and Kung Pao Patreon episodes, and both hold a special place in my heart. I'm a little sad that many of these comedy-themed episodes end up behind the Patreon paywall, while the regular episodes are mostly reserved for serious filmmakers and films.
This letter is too good to be true. Does he want a favor from us?
Basically, I'd love to hear more full-length anniversary and comedy-themed episodes in the regular ICC feed, and I'm sure other listeners would too. All right, well, we can talk about this, and there's a reason that we don't do lots of comedy-related stuff in the normal feed, which is that me and Will already have podcasts where we make fun of stuff.
That's true.
I have Loose Cannons, Will has Michael and Us. And when I started this podcast with Will, I'm like, well, Will is the smartest guy I know.
Far from it. Justin, you're the smartest guy I know.
And I would like to challenge myself and pick filmmakers or topics that you usually don't have discussion with people. And that's what the Important Cinema Club is, which is the main reason why we haven't done Ace Ventura When Nature Calls anniversary episode.
Well, we do a lot of these too behind the paywall because they're easier.
Yes, we don't have to do any work for them.
But folks, you heard the man say it. Apparently, they're very funny.
Yeah.
And enough of them have accumulated now that your $5 is a pretty good value.
It is.
Because then you can listen to 14 of these things?
It's going to be 17 with the 70 episode. And now for my question. Would you ever consider doing episodes focused on more specific parts of filmmaking, such as film editing, cinematography, or maybe even title design? Sorry, I'm a little biased on the subject. Now, this is another thing that me and Will have talked about a lot, and the issue with doing something about a cinematographer is that I don't know how much I would have to say about it.
We would just end up talking about the directors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Other than, the pictures are really pretty.
Yeah.
But if we have experts that want to come on about, say, title design, well, our door is open.
I can't think of any experts on title design.
If only I knew the guy from Art of the Title.
Yeah.
I feel like the important cinema club's mainly auteurs bent is leaving many incredible filmmakers and craftspeople to fall by the wayside. Surely there are enough great cinematographers out there to fill up at least a few episodes. Think of it as a chance to take the accursed one perfect shot culture to task. Man, he's speaking Will Sloan's language.
Okay, wait. Let's toss this idea around a little bit. What if we did an episode with 2 cinematographers? What if
that's
we
a good idea.
Greg Toland and either Christopher Doyle or Vilmos Zsigmond or somebody like that?
Yeah, more of a compare and contrast than just talking about their work.
And we can talk about what those cinematographers brought to the directors they worked with. And because we're talking about 2 or 3, we wouldn't run out of things. We could move on to the next one.
That's a great idea. Let's table that. That'll appear in a few episodes.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry for the long letter, guys. Keep up the great work, Will. P.S. When does the Loose Cannons Important Cinema Club crossover episode happen? Surely a broad overview of the Cannons film oeuvre for Important Cinema Club listeners is in order. How else are you going to keep that Will Sloan Matthew Kumar feud going? Well, we've already slotted Will to appear on Loose Cannons. He's going to talk about King Lear, Godar's Cannon film.
But it's not coming for a long time.
No.
Because they're still at 1984.
He may appear in a sequel to that garbage we loved as kids. Because Matthew Kumar, big Will Sloan fan.
Yeah.
And he's always talking about, when can we do another episode with Will? But that's his fault. He's out of the country, so nothing we can do about that.
And I look forward to healing the wounds in our relationship. I look forward to a more positive future with me and Matthew.
That's never going to happen. All right. And on the Patreon note, this is a summer, as I said a few episodes ago, of 1,000 listeners, where we're getting 1,000 listeners per episode. We're putting it out to you, Important Cinema Club Nation. I hate that name.
I love
Thanks,
it.
Will.
I love it.
And
we can fucking conquer Poland with a name like that.
We want you to go and tell everybody you know to listen to this podcast. Can you imagine that sweet quadruple digits that we would get every week?
It weirds me out to think that people I've never met have an opinion about me. So
listening to this podcast.
So I don't know.
And at the same time, listen to our Patreon. Man, let's make this the summer of
$1,000.
Yeah, exactly.
I could use a bit of that.
So sign up for our Patreon. It's $5. This week we're doing Bong Joon-ho, the director of The Host and Memories of Murder, and the upcoming Okja. So, you want to hear us talk about that, right? And you also want us to hear us talk about Austin Powers and Kung Pao and last week's, which I thought was an amazing episode on special featers.
Oh, yeah.
We did not get enough listeners for that one.
Who cares?
For all the work that I put into it.
Who cares?
Me.
Okay.
Me. I'm going to be out on the street if we don't get these Patreons. And on that note, let's just thank some of the Patreon subscribers that we haven't done in a long time. So thank you very much, Jay, I'm not going to say your last name, David, Gabe, Sam, Rick, Nico,
Tim, Samuel, Jacob, Violet.
Oh, whoa, we have a superstar that's a Patreon listener.
And Albert.
Thank you very much for subscribing to the Patreon. We're going to keep doing them as long as you keep listening. So, what are we doing next week, Will?
We are doing...
We're going to ride the news.
We're doing a man who I would love to see make a Mondo movie. Legendary filmmaker Ron Howard.
Okay, so why are we doing Ron Howard? We actually discussed this months ago of doing an episode on him.
We did.
And he recently popped up in the news because he took over directing Han Solo with only 3 weeks of shooting left. And I think it'll be fascinating to go through his career and see the man that he has become. The guy who's directed 3 Da Vinci Code films.
I was looking at his filmography today and I was thinking, God, I've seen a lot of these. Yeah. How did that happen?
Are you going to revisit A Grinch Stole Christmas? No, there's no way I'm ever laying my eyes on that.
I've seen it several times.
You have?
It was just like on TV all the time.
That was one of those movies that sitting in the theater as a kid, I went, this movie is bad.
The Grinch was a movie that I like waited for months, anticipated, really looked forward to it, and then couldn't convince myself, couldn't let myself believe it was bad.
Yeah.
So there was that whole midsection that's just unwatchable, where I was kind of like, this is good. This is good.
And I don't know why I'm interested in Ron Howard so much. Maybe because he is a filmmaker that is undoubtedly passionate about what he's doing. If you see him in interviews and stuff like that, he started at the Roger Corman School, directing a film for him to get another opportunity to make something, and that he's jumped from genre to genre. And like, so he did a Western, he did a 70mm epic starring Tom Cruise. He's done like everything, and it's all pretty much middle of the road.
Yeah, and none of them are all that great.
Yeah, but this gives you an opportunity to watch a bunch of Michael Keaton films.
Hell yeah.
And that's really all that cinema's about.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
Oh man, this episode's run really long. But we always have to have an end tag, so...
So let's talk about what's on our mind today, which is the trailer for the new Jackie Chan movie, The Foreigner.
I mean, this is Jackie Chan finally showing up on the big screen again. Do you think it's actually going to appear in cinemas? I feel like it is.
I have my doubts. I mean, Jackie Chan and Pierce Brosnan is not exactly a hot ticket item in American movie theaters these days.
Darected by Martin Campbell, the man who gave us Green Lantern, Casino Royale, No Escape,
GoldenEye.
Oh, that's right, GoldenEye.
And Edge of Darkness.
Yeah, terrible movie, starring Mel Gibson.
Apparently a good TV show.
Yes, that he directed as well.
Featuring Mr. Joseph Donald Baker.
Your favorite? Joe Don Baker. When are we going to do a Joe Don Baker episode?
Oh, I would love to. Let's do that sooner rather than later, okay?
That's right. When did he pass away? Was it recently?
He's alive.
He is?
Yeah.
Do you think we could have him on?
I would love to have him on.
But back to The Foreigner. Maybe Joe Don Baker's in it.
Who knows?
How would you feel if you were watching a movie and Joe Don just like sauntered on screen?
It happened a few years ago when I went to see the movie Mud with Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, that's right. And were you like...
Well, I saw his name on the poster, so I knew he was in it, but I was very happy to see Joe Don. I mean, you don't see him that much anymore.
Yeah, it's like when I saw George Kennedy in The Gambler, the Mark Wahlberg film, in like a tiny half-second role.
And also, Joe Don Baker, like, he's really grown into himself as he's gotten older, because he was always a big guy with a deep voice, but as he's gotten older, it's impossible that a man could have a voice that deep.
Really? Like...
It's just, the man has unbelievable presence in his 80s.
I wonder how healthy he is, and like if he can still appear in movies, or if he's just not really that interested.
I wonder.
But back to The Foreigner. We'll save our Joe Don Bake talk for another time.
So this is a movie. Jackie Chan plays a Chinese man in Ireland whose daughter is killed in an IRA bombing.
It's based on a book called The Chinaman. I'm shocked they didn't keep that title.
And so Jackie is pursuing Pierce Brosnan, the government official who I guess is tasked to the case. And he wants to get the name of the Irish terrorists who did this. And when Pierce Brosnan won't give him the names, Jackie goes on a one-man army killing spree, I guess. And I think there's some suggestion that Pierce Brosnan was involved in the IRA at some point. I don't know if the politics of this movie are good or not.
It's going to be
probably bad, right?
It's going to be weird because watching the trailer, you're just waiting for the moment for Jackie to throw a punch. Like, you're like, is this going to be another Shinjuku incident style? And he does. It looks like he's getting into Jackie Chan style fights in the movie.
Well, there's one thing I know about Jackie these days. It's that all the best stunts will be in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, watching these, I think Jackie must be just in constant pain all day. Like, we saw Donnie Yen talk once, and he talked about how he can't sleep on a mattress.
Because his elbow hurts so much.
He has to sleep on a wooden floor because he's broken so many bones, because he'll, like, sink into the mattress.
But at this point, Jackie is not doing anything on screen, right? Why would he?
I mean, he still moves better than I can.
Yeah, he does.
And he's in constant pain.
And he has never looked older than he does in this trailer. Like, Martin Campbell was like, we want Jackie to be, like, pure, sad-faced Jackie Chan.
And I think that's good, because I've seen enough Jackie Chan movies lately where it's him and a bunch of Cantonese pop stars running around.
I mean, there's nothing sadder than Kung Fu Yoga.
Dreadful.
Where it's like, remember old Jackie Chan?
Well, because he makes all these movies. Skip Trace is another one where it's like he's surrounded by all these like young pop stars who are cops, and he's the cop too, and there's no acknowledgement. Why is this one cop 40 years older than all of us? And he's got jet black dyed hair.
He's not to the point yet that he has like the Steven Seagal donut around his face.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like the jet black, well, I guess, goatee.
Like, kind of vaginal.
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, that was our Jackie Chan update for...
Stay tuned for the 100th episode spectacular.
Of the, the Jackie Chan... Well, we need a name for it, like Jackathon or...
The Jackathon, hell yeah.
No, sorry, Will miming the motion, but...
Listen, we don't have to wait till the 100th episode for a Jackathon.
This is what happens when we run long.